very brightly colored and it's very loud, and it's fun for a while.
We want to be free to do what we want to do.
Were Muhammad Ali and Sonny Barker, the president of Hell's Angels.
This is 1095.
So you're in sunny Bristol, I assume.
Yeah, I wish it has been quite sunny recently, but today is a classic kind of early December fog over everything. I can see about 50 yards out there. And you're in Thailand?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you've traveled quite a bit, which we'll talk about, but I'm in the north of Thailand. I don't know if you got up here when you were making One Giant Leap. I was looking, I know you're in Bangkok, but I'm north of Chiang Mai, in a place called Pai, it's a cool little town, very different, full of artists, musicians, all sorts, crazy people. But yeah, it's up in the north. It's a really beautiful part of the world. I'm kind of off-grid, off-road, so properly out the way.
Yeah, well done, because obviously there was a moment, a day where you had to make a decision, shall I, shan't I? And you did it. And it's just, I don't know how many moments like that are pivotal in our lives. And it's interesting when you look back on it, well, where was my mind when that happened? So well done.
Yeah, I mean, I will not forget, because I was living in Singapore. I don't know if you've been to Singapore before, but
yeah, I've been to Singapore.
Yeah, I loved Singapore from a career perspective, but I was at the point where I'm like, you know what, I want a bit of freedom, and that's Singapore is it's the engine. It's full on, and I used to come up here on holiday, so built a place, kind of, had the vision of coming up here. So, but yeah, Bristol. So I mean, Bristol. You're not from Bristol, right?
No, I had a similar one of those moments where you have to make a decision. No, I'm from London, from East London, from Essex actually. And since One Giant Leap, which was like 20 years ago now, I've just been floating around like a balloon in the wind, just letting life take me to wherever it wants to take me. And I've got to say, I'm super grateful for where the wind has blown me, because I've met some beautiful people, been in some beautiful places. And always there I was, me, Duncan, there, wherever it was, whether it was in Bangkok or in Australia or wherever it is. So anyway, when, as time passes, I'm 60 now, I turned 60 2 years ago. And I think I just had this moment of like, okay, maybe it's time for me to just stop. So I decided, and at last, thanks to my family, were very grateful. I bought a flat here in Bristol, and here I am. And then I moved in like 2 weeks before lockdown.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's been an interesting, it's not been all pleasure, but I've thoroughly enjoyed the lockdown. I've thoroughly enjoyed the absence of stuff, social life, festivals, everything that I've been doing for like 60 years. Suddenly it just got reduced to like eating and sleeping and these amazing, incredibly deep conversations with the people on this little box that I have, like we're having now. And then at the end, you'll be gone, boop, and I'll be back here on my own again. And it's been a really amazing gift, and kind of like a logical step in what I've been doing. Like last year, I spent a month at a Zen monastery in Tamil Nadu. And I did a month Panchakarma in Hyderabad. And then I did a month in Bali, investigating different aspects of medicine and quietness. And then I came back and I visited my friend Martin, my teacher, and my friend Martin Aylward, who has a meditation place in the south of France near Bordeaux. And I did a 2-week silent retreat with him, which I'd never done 2 weeks silent before. And then I came back to London and went, I think I'm going to buy a flat. And literally I just found this place immediately. And for once, we can talk about that. I made a decision. Well, or was it just obvious that this is what I had to do? I mean, since in lockdown, I've really been observing my reactions to the world.
The interesting thing is, sorry, go on.
No, go.
The reason I say Bristol, I mean, obviously, your accent's not a Bristolian accent, but it is interesting that you've ended up in Bristol, because when you look at the work you've done, And, you know, going back to, it must be 20 years ago when you did the first kind of One Giant Leap, you know, that is all very much how I see the essence of Bristol. I mean, it's a real hub of music and creativity and, of course, graffiti and art. And so, yeah,
alternative thought.
Yeah. So, you know, you maybe no coincidence that you should end up there really after all that. So.
No, exactly. And whether it's end up or stepping stone somewhere else, time will tell. But it's as we all, as you and anybody listening to this knows, this is an incredible time we're in.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
how significant it is, I cannot be underestimated. You know, on my side, and I have a feeling your side as well, of we've been dreaming of a revolution. And maybe it's happening around us right now without all the guns and shouting that we thought might be the case. Just we got sent home.
I think
and they turned the machine off. They turned it off. I mean, there was a few of me and my mates were going, I can't believe it. This is, you know, they've turned the machine off. Everybody's slowed down. So as I say, that's what I've been doing for the last couple of years anyway. And this whole need to be the One Giant Leap, Mr. One Giant Leap, which I've been for 20 years. It's a very big, strong hat. And it's really taken me, I mean, here we are today because of my One Giant Leap hat. So I'm so grateful for the way that happened. Because it was it was a miracle. It wasn't a planned thing. We'd been making music. I mean, I'll give you a little bit of a story, which I guess would be interesting. I was a record producer like for 20 years. And the last album I made as a record producer was Take That's first album, Take That and Party. And it was a very, you know, I was right in it. I was like, you know, right in, I want pop hits. I want, you know, attention span and all that stuff. It was perfect for me. And then at the same time, it was awful for me because I was actually making music that wasn't really from my heart. So then at that time, that was the early 90s. There was a whole revolution going on there with the ecstasy. And suddenly I was in a didgeridoo led band called Tribal Drift, Terrible Draft, as we refer to it now. And suddenly I was out of the studio and at Glastonbury and at WOMAD and at all these festivals and surrounded by this alternative thing that I hadn't really witnessed, you know, till that time. I'd been a professional musician and I spent 20 years in a studio. And then I met Jamie, who was in Faithless at the time and surfing a very beautiful cloud there because they just had, you know, can't get no sleep. And he was flying. So we just started making music from our heart rather than for a living. And I think that as a musician and as a creative, anything you do creatively, it kind of changes when you try and make money out of it. It has to, because you're trying to make money out of it. So we just started doing One Giant Leap. It wasn't called One Giant Leap at that point, because we wanted to do it. We just wanted to make a little album that see if we could mix as many disparate things together. So to reveal the essence of connectedness between all the disparate things, you know, like mixing Bubba Marl and Oprah Winfrey and Kurt Vonnegut. And then Maxi Jazz came down and we wrote My Culture. It was this very organic thing. And then suddenly we were in Chris Blackwell's office. Chris Blackwell was Bob Marley's producer, and he formed Island Records, for those who don't know. Kind of, you know, I see him as the cool Richard Branson in a way. Anyway, he's heard what we were doing, and it just fitted exactly what he was aiming at the moment, at that time, with this company, Palm Pictures. And suddenly, poof, we were off. You know, I'd left my record producing life and my ecstasy taking, rave making 90s. And suddenly I was on a plane to Senegal to go and meet Baba Marl. So and then since then, that has changed. I mean, it was a revolution. It was like, I've just been watching The Crown actually this morning. And it's for me, it was a bit like the Lady Diana moment, where suddenly you're just taken from one world and just plonked in another world.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Luckily,
I can imagine. I mean, it's interesting. I've always listened to the album actually. Like it's one of those things that's always been on the playlist, right? Especially, I mean, My Culture is such a great, catchy tune that doesn't get boring, which is is a very hard balance to find, right? Songs are either great,
and also
that
lyric, the lyric of it is I see it's like a prayer. I mean, I use it as a prayer in ceremonies and stuff that I do. I just recite it quite often because it's a beautiful testament to family and to connectedness and our culture.
Yeah, totally. And well, I mean, I was going to say, I caught up on the documentary again this week because I knew you were speaking, and I haven't watched that since then. I mean, I remembered the essence of it, but I hadn't really watched it. And I was like, wow, 20 years have gone past, when you watch these things and you look back. But the thing that struck me actually is that it's very of the current time as well, like you were just saying. I mean, I think then if you think back, you had this kind of real pop revolution going on. I mean, I hadn't realized that you were producing Robbie Williams' stuff, and that makes sense why he ended up in My Culture, which is one of my questions. But it does feel very of this time as well. There's this whole other music revolution that's come about, which is, I think many people pure of the art do not like, the kind of Instagramification of things and the instant fame of, online, and how, I mean, the DJ phenomenon now of thumb drives versus in our day of 1200s, so it's interesting. I don't know whether you see it as it's just we've always been like this. There's this kind of yin and yang of what's going on, or whether this is a kind of another, peak where there's disruption and a lot of people need to go back to their roots and kind of reflect rather than, get too involved in the technology of the age,
It is a kind of cyclical thing going on but I actually feel that this time it's the age of Aquarius, basically. I think, I've been saying I want the film I've been pitching here since I got back from Mexico, which maybe we'll talk about in a bit, was called Mind the Gap, which is a kind of very London thing, which they say on the tube as you step off. But when I came back from Mexico, I came back in 2012 and there was a whole thing of the end of the world. And I just had this idea that now I feel vindicated in a way that I kept saying, the world has ended, everybody. This is the age of Aquarius. The time that the hippies were going on about, it's here now. And so we should explore what we want to keep from the old world and what we want to let go. And I think that now, in the time we're on now, we're really looking at what we don't need. Like I'm saying, I feel so more appreciative of my social engagements now that they're very rare and thin. I appreciate it more. And I think that that's the lesson for us all. Like, we're all appreciating what we have and maybe what we don't have as well, like, and being grateful for the thing that we have. I mean, financially, I'm very lucky. I'm okay. I won't be okay forever, but I'm okay. So that's I'm so grateful for. And I've made the money from music as well, which is a miracle. But I'm also very aware that that's most people's world isn't like that. And I think that the backlash of what's going to happen next year, we don't know what's going to happen next year. We may be shifting into the age of Aquarius, but there might be some trouble along the way. And we're all thinking of that. And I think there is a lot of fear in the planet right now. So it's very important to focus on the inner light, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't agree.
I've been looking.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, we're fortunate, I feel very fortunate where we live up here. Obviously, Thailand has been, it's been disrupted economically, but we haven't really had the virus issue in the same way. The lockdown ended ages ago. I'm kind of in a beautiful place around nature. So, and that, was not planned. And I speak to friends and I do realize very fortunate because I love your optimism around it because it's pretty rare right now. I think with a lot of people, there is the opposite view and a lot of frustration. And that doesn't really get you anywhere, but it's good to hear an optimistic view of, what comes out of this and what you learn from it, how you go into next year.
I mean, I've often been accused of being naive, and I even so naive that I think naivety is actually an asset because, you can actually see the light in a dark situation. And I really feel that the invitation of this time is to sort out our own family and we have to get local again. We have to it's all, for me, it became too expanded. Like, I've had to turn the news off because it's just too much. I can't take it. One, I can't take it seriously. And two, I don't really feel connected to it. And then here I am in my new flat in a new city and everything. And most of my connections are digital now. So there's a lot of work to be done in our own minds and our own hearts, I think, that can pull us out of the shit.
Yeah, I couldn't agree.
I'm hanging on to that.
No, I couldn't. I'm with you. I don't think. Look, at the end of the day, the only thing you can really have an effect on is yourself, anyway. So you can,
Exactly.
you can worry all day about everything else, but it kind of starts.
And it's very hard to really, myself to actually really have an understanding of what is going on. I mean, I meet a lot of my friends who seem to be really sure they know what's going on. And I listen to them and I got to go, okay, yeah, that could be what's going on. Whether it's a conspiracy head or a whatever, or a Trump supporter, or, there's so many different polarized opinions. I'm trying, I'm working on the Buddha's message at the moment. The Buddha has come into me in the last couple of years through my teacher and he just appeared. And so therefore working with what is all we've got to go for.
Awesome.
So I lost myself a bit there.
No, that's right. I want to ask you, I mean, I think you've probably I'm going to ask the question you may have already answered a little bit, but just, in terms of that, the birth of One Giant Leap, you kind of said it wasn't planned. Obviously, from what you're telling me now, it was a kind of reaction to the job you're in and going out and connecting, more with the art of music and the stuff you love.
Yes.
And I can't remember the line that you guys used throughout it. You described there's a kind of philosophical line that explains the project. But anyway, I will look it up in a minute. But did you have any expectation of how big it would go? And having people like Bono picking up TVs and saying, these guys are awesome. And then obviously, Robbie Williams on albums and on songs. Did you have any kind of expectation, or it just kind of blew up because you were following?
Literally zero expectation.
Yeah.
We were just doing a little album. We would have done it for no money, got it done, and then when it was Chris Blackwell, that he just said, well, what do you want to do? And I just got my first laptop. And so I said, well, I've been in the studio for 20 years. Now I can do it on a laptop. So let's go out into the world and record people breaking down the boundaries. So it was a very big idea. However, my little Duncan was so scared. Like, it was like the fact that we were making a film. I'd never made a film before. I'd never even held a camera or so suddenly I'm directing a movie, or me and Jamie are directing a movie. So we had to think, okay, well, how's this going to work? Where's the emotional tie for our audience? And we didn't realize that just the fact that we didn't really know what we were doing, and we really didn't, it wasn't like a planned thing by the BBC or something. It was just really was these two geezers chancing it out there, asking people, whether it's Kurt Vonnegut or whoever, famous and non-famous people, and just going to meet our heroes. So we didn't really get it until there was this, the Palm Pictures Chris Blackwell owns Palm Pictures. So there was this Suzette who ran the company. She was a very hard woman. She wrote she probably still does. She writes all her emails in capital letters, which is just a thing. It's kind of, when you read her emails, you can see her kind of shouting. She came in the studio one day, like a November day like this, and we played her the Baba Mal God chapter, which we'd more or less finished. And she was crying. She's like, and then everybody who was coming in was like having incredible emotional response to what we'd done. And the penny dropped, like, oh my God, accidentally, we'd really hit the nail on the head of this feeling of connectedness. Is the thing that we all strive for, we all yearn for, and whether that's in our immediate friends and family, or whether it's a global thing. So when you see like an Aboriginal leader talking about stuff, not political stuff, but stuff about his life, and you go, oh, that's just like me. And I think that's where we hit upon it kind of accidentally, because there was no script or there was no storyboard. It was just us turning up. And there was something also, a blessing, like you saw in the documentary, like the way Asha Bhosle is the most famous Indian Bollywood singer. She'd been on more movies than anybody, blah, 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 blah. I had no idea who she was. All I heard, I knew this song Brimful of Asha that I'd heard in the 90s. And it's like, okay, Asha, oh, that's Asha Bhosle, okay. She just appeared in front of us having her lunch, and then somehow we just went to her table and kind of schmoozed her. And then she said yes to appear on our thing. Like, wow, how did that happen? Or, you know, Eckhart Tolle, how many times does he get asked every day to do an interview that he probably says no to? He said yes. And we asked him one question and he talked for 3 hours and gave us his full spiels, and he became the star of our second movie, What About Me? I mean, that's, okay, I can take credit for, you know, oh yes, I'm very good at doing this and that. I can't take credit for that. Or Baba Mal, or, you know, those people just saying yes to us was amazing.
A celebration of unity through diversity. That was it. I was trying to remember that was the line. So yeah, which I think
is a Hindu, which is a Hindu thing as well. That's where we, you know, unity and diversity is because the more diversity you show, actually the unity shines through. Yeah, beautiful. That was a good day. We thought of that.
So the album. So you got the documentary, you got the album. Was there a natural progression and connection between the two? I couldn't, just by researching this, I wasn't sure. And for me, the album I've always listened to, but the documentary I remember. But there is, you know, people like Robbie Williams jumping in. Did this kind of happen naturally afterwards because you created this kind of movement around what you were doing? Was it all part of the same thing?
It was all definitely part of the same thing. And the movie only became the important part halfway when we were in the trip around the world and we were filming everything and we were starting to really realize what was really going on. I mean, in essence, we were making the album, but we'd been inspired by a lot of people who had mixed dialogue. Like My Life in the Bush of Ghosts by Eno and Byrne was not our model, because there were other things as well, but the way that they had dialogue, it wasn't a rap, but it was mixed in with the music and given musical language. And it might just be somebody doing an exorcism or doing all kinds of strange concepts, but mixed into the music seamlessly. So that was kind of what we were thinking. Okay, so then, you know, each song would have an idea. So each song would be death or sex or money or just some big idea. And without trying to prove anything, we'd just ask questions to see what people thought. You know, what happens after you die was one of our questions, you know, and we got so many brilliant answers, and they got put together and mixed in with them Hotel of Queens. And suddenly we had this, as you say, it is really relevant still now, because, you know, when we've been looking at it now, when you see online so many videos of people with headphones on, not actually in the same room making music together. Well, that's what we did with One Giant Leap back then. It was, okay, we made the kind of first lockdown movie in 1999.
It was the first crowdsourced thing as well. But I mean, the other thing is, looking at it, what really startled me was, you know, if you had a decision today to do what you guys did, it's so much easier now, right? But back then, just trying to contact people, I mean, you know, now you can jump on Instagram. I mean, I connected with a few people this week. You know, you can get to everyone now, right? We're all connected and somewhat disconnected at the same time, ironically. But yeah, like there must have been a lot of work you put in, you know, in terms of just getting. I mean, some of those examples you have then just happened, and right place, who knows, the universe aligned. But I imagine in a lot of cases you were on the phones, probably fax machines back then, was it? I'm trying to think how 20 years ago, what were we doing? I mean, pay phones and fax machines around Asia, trying to communicate.
Yeah, post restant. No, email had just started.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's like, how much responsibility? I mean, I was born in Essex, in England. My mum and dad put a very strong work ethic into me. So luckily, and I'm very grateful for that. I get up in the morning and I tend to do things, but I'm not sure that it's from a free state of mind. It's just, that's the way I'm programmed. So therefore, and Jamie's the same, we're doers, you know, so if you do things, it has repercussions. Probably most of what you do has no benefit at all. You're just flapping around in the water. But every now and again, something catches. Like, okay, like One Giant Leap was that. So for me and Jamie, suddenly we had this incredibly strong focus to do things.
Yeah.
In Gabon, which I've been to a few times, there's a beautiful concept of turtle mind, in that the turtle can't look up. So it never sees what's coming. It only sees what's in front of it. And I learned that when I was in Gabon, and it really went in deeply to me, because the problems are always stuff that isn't in your immediate periphery to work with. So literally, I get up every day, and this is how One Giant Leap was born. It wasn't really looking at, oh, we're going to get Grammys and my life's going to change. It was just like, what do I have to do today? Okay, that tune needs a bit of work. Did Baba Mal get back? Okay, let's get a date. Like it kind of self-determines, and all you have to do is use the skills that I'd learned, because I'd had 20 years as a record producer, like making pop music, Transition Vamp and Take That and other things, and soul music and reggae music, and right from the early 80s. So I'd learned these techniques of dealing with people when they're behind a microphone as a producer. And so those skills that I had, and my organizational skills of storing samples and all that, suddenly I had One Giant Leap to put those skills into. And by putting those skills into, it had effects. And somehow the door just opened to us, and boom, suddenly we're like, okay, yeah, what do you want? Yeah, we can do that. So yeah, that's, as I say, I can't really take credit for, I'm not sure I can take credit for anything. The world goes on, whatever we want, it just continues. And the only choice we have is how we meet it.
Do you believe in
right now?
I do you believe in free will? I didn't have this as a question to ask, but when I'm listening to you talking, it's an interesting question, because obviously you've been sitting and reflecting as well. So I imagine these things cross your mind, right?
Cross my mind is the understatement of the year. That especially in lockdown here, like I kind of hinted at earlier on. I'm careful with the words of, like, free will is such a hot word.
Yeah.
That I'm not sure that, I'd had all these conversations with people with free will, and it's a problem. You can't I put that to one side. I'm not, I'm glad that you've used it, but it's on my word list, which I think is quite important. But having said that, this idea that I am a programmed Duncan, my freedom is only within being Duncan. So it's already quite limited. Because I can only respond to things like Duncan would. And I've been very well programmed right from, well, it depends how far you want to go back, like us all, to be, anyway. So the idea that I meet the universe as it goes off around me, rather than being responsible for the universe going off around me, is a fundamental, that's kind of the first level of free will. And then when I've watched myself in a situation where nothing changes, but each day, sometimes I'm high as a kite, sometimes I'm fully depressed. And then you start to go, well, what's that? So I'm absolutely obsessed with the idea of, I'll use the free will word because it has an understanding to it, but beyond that, to us as reactions to the world, rather than people who control the world. There are a lot of people at the moment seem to feel that they can control what's going on. And I think maybe that's lesson one of this situation, that there is no control. There is just stuff happening. And if you're lucky, you meet it with grace and with intelligence. Maybe I'm lucky. And I know I'm lucky because I'm meeting it with optimism, this funny situation we're in. But actually, like most people I talk to, they go, okay, but I'm not sure it's good what's happening. It's just how I've been programmed.
Yeah.
So that's a short answer before we go down some horrible rabbit hole.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to go down the old. I don't want to go down the free will rabbit hole. It's just, when you were talking, and it's something I ponder, and I think you're right. It's it's not the best word either, because it very loosely describes something, and that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But I couldn't help but
Martin
ask.
Aylward, my Buddhist teacher, Martin Aylward, who's a very good friend of mine. I've known him like for 20, 30 years. He's got this amazing way. One of the things he said is that all the Buddha's messages were translated by English Christian, European Christian academics. So they had a way of translating that actually made the Buddha's message much more Christian and thought and mind orientated than so he often changes the translation of what the Buddha said from the original Pali. It's like, and it's so interesting when you look at words, like free will is a classic one. It's got this kind of connotation of Christian stuff or something. So we need to just say, okay, that's that, but we're in a different space now.
Well, I think that whole, the notion of life is suffering is an English translation of the Buddha's teaching. But I think if
and
you
the Buddha
say that in
maybe
English,
said,
you say it in English, it doesn't really, that isn't really what's meant.
Yeah.
It's, like there's a much better way to, you probably need a paragraph to describe that, because in English, that just comes across as, everything's shit.
Well, what Martin explains that particular phrase as, he says, it's you either live with friction or with ease.
Yeah, that I think is a much more accurate, life has friction. It sounds really crap, but it's actually a much better description, I think, of the Pali.
Oh, then suffering, definitely.
Yeah, interesting.
So it's where you meet. It's where you meet it, and you can meet it with grace. So there is, whatever situation, death itself, obviously, you can meet it with grace or.
So I noticed there's a Buddha behind you, and you said you've been to so do you practice in like the Zen tradition, or you just kind of immerse yourself in different practices and with different teachers and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I've been flirting with it for 30 years with meditation and yoga. And what's happened since lockdown is I now, because there's nothing else going on, it's not a struggle to do it. And my half an hour practice is now, I'm up very early in the morning, and I usually do 2, maybe sometimes 3 hours of breathing, stretching, meditating, chanting. Because I'm also working at the moment with this guy, Antama, who's fully versed in the Vedic tradition. He knows all the mantras, and he's also a rapper from Southeast London. So we're kind of making this hip hop album that has this underground spiritual vibe to it, and we're trying to get the balance right between that. But so therefore I've been learning about Ganesh. I mean, Ganesh has been in my life since I first went to India, like we all do. We go to India and we fall in love with the funny elephant god, but you never actually look at what does that mean. So I've been learning about that, and so I've been putting more time in than I have. I used to read technology manuals and learning how to work Logic better, and now the work right now is not that. I'm making music, and I have my studio, and I'm doing this album with Antama. Me and Jamie are doing stuff. We're doing the 20-year anniversary, which we can talk about in a minute. We've just contacted Chris Blackwell to say, come on, it's 20 years. Let's put up some fireworks and make a bit of a fuss. So we're going to do that over the next year or so. It's next year is the 20-year anniversary. So I've got a new album. I've got some edits and some tracks that never were released. And the second film, What About Me, which actually more people have seen, we now own. We managed to prize it away from the solicitors who had it filed away in a cabinet in a very dark, faraway room. So now we're just trying to work out how to release that. And of course I go, it's 10 years old now, the second one. But you show it to people, especially kids, we're getting really good reactions. So who knows? We'll put it out, we'll give it a little polish and see if who watches it.
I mean, I like, it's interesting you say kids are looking at it, kids are liking it. In the last few years, I mean, you look like bands like Left Field have started kind of, doing stuff again. Orbital have come back, all of these bands that were like early 90s, a lot of them are, I mean, the Prodigy, unfortunately, Keith Flint, unfortunately,
Keith's gone.
But they were still going. I mean, and a lot of those kids don't even know that these acts started all the way back then. But I just think maybe there's a lack of decent music around. Maybe it's a lot of this stuff's coming out again, coming to the surface, because there's just not great stuff out there now. I mean, that's my limited view of it. I'm not an expert at all in the music industry, but when I look at the absolute smorgasbord of decent shit that we had from kind of early 90s through that half a decade, there was so much great stuff out there, and a lot of it.
Also, I think there's two things. One, us oldies. I mean, I'm older than you as well, so I'm from the 70s. So I'm living in a Led Zeppelin world, David Bowie, blah 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 blah. Oh, but and there is tons of amazing new music. There isn't is what we were brought up, where it was all focused tightly. So now, because of Spotify and the rest of them, but Spotify mainly, often you're not even sure if you're listening to an old record or a new record. So it's taken away a lot of fashion clouds. So you can, if you're a kid, suddenly you click on Led Zeppelin and you hear Stairway to Heaven for the first time, and you don't even know what's attached to that for us. us oldies, all like, you know, how much that changed our world back then. So I think that that's an interesting switch. That things like I did an album with this girl Leslie Gomez 5 years ago now, and it's now just beginning. We're going, you know, her listen rates are now over the million, and you know, and it's starting to now people are starting to hear it, and that's a beautiful thing. I think the fact because in the old music business model, you had a little window of maybe a month if you were lucky, and if you didn't grab on in that month, you were gone. You weren't in the shops. You weren't available. It was finished. But now everything's just sitting there, waiting for anybody's attention. Like this interview we're doing now, someone could be watching this in 100 years' time. Now
I never thought. Do you think the rewards are better for artists now then, or do you think because it's
it's awful.
Okay, but what you're saying is, so it's nowhere near as good, but the opportunity over time is better as such. But
and I think we have to get a new model.
Rewards. Yeah,
a new model is coming. I mean, you know, basic wage will change everything. If that comes, like, you know, it might well come. That once the revolution, maybe the music business was one of the first things to suffer from the revolution of the age of Aquarius, in that profit, you can't make music into just a money machine. And that's what it had become because of Led Zeppelin and all those things that happened in the 70s and the 60s, where the business banking world realized, like they'd realized with war, maybe that war makes money. So let's make war. We can make guns, sell guns. They blow them up. We sell them more guns. And the music business just became a little bit of that kind of model that, you know, Led Zeppelin sold trillion albums. And then suddenly there's everyone from Iron Maiden down, you know, like it became a machine. So the good news is that the machine got turned off, and the people who were in control of that machine, when the revolution happened back at the noughties, you know, when it was, what was the first online music site that everyone was really scared about? Napster.
Yeah, Napster, the one that the guys from Metallica took them down, didn't they? The drummer, because Napster, wasn't it one of the Facebook founders, I think, was involved in it from memory, but yeah, But
rather than seeing, like Bowie saw everything. Bowie in '99 he sold all his stuff because he knew what was coming. And if the industry had that same kind of concept where they embraced it, unfortunately they didn't, and it killed them, and they're gone, and they can't park the cars anymore. In fact, they haven't even got a car. And I personally, having worked in the late 70s all the way through the 80s in the music business, I mean, in the 80s, I was, you know, working with big names, Duran Duran, Paul McCartney. I was kind of in the B-list record producer thing. So, and in the 80s, that meant I was earning £500 a day. £500. I get £500 to do an album now.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, very, very, very different placement. Yeah.
Whoa. Yeah, but I'm now doing music because I love it. And so when I'm not on a producer book where she's sending me out with everybody else that she owns to kind of pitch, you know, and you end up take that or whatever, and that makes more money, and that puts you into that even more in. Luckily, I feel very grateful that I escaped and tribal drift, didgeridoos, and into this new global thing. And here I am now, you know, carrying on doing my thing.
And you mentioned the anniversary, you touched on it there. What's the plan? What can you talk about? You're going to do a relaunch, are you, the album and stuff? Or you are? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, basically, I'm working out how to do that. But there are so many fans that when it came, although we didn't, and that's another interesting thing, me and Jamie at the time, we didn't realize how far it had gone into our family, you know, especially people who were traveling and people, you know, the kind of the noughties hippies, you know, like they were living this hippie lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, I did the India, Thailand, and then I never come home. But that I think, when I look at the people who know it, there is a certain type of person that knows it from that era, right?
So basically the job is, through the social media, we'll have the right person. We need to awaken all those, say, look, this is a memory, and also there's stuff you haven't heard. And a lot of people who know the first album never got to see the second album because it never actually really got released. And the What About Me film has gone round there's a place called the Sanctuary in Thailand, and they still show What About Me every Tuesday night on the beach.
Wow,
And
really?
that's like,
Where's that where's that in Samui, the Sanctuary down in Samui or somewhere?
Yeah, it's
Copenhagen.
I can't remember. Copenhagen.
It would be, yeah. So are you gonna remix any of the tunes? Yeah. Well, I mean, you could say, I mean, this where I am here actually in Pi is considered the kind of Copenhagen of the North. It's,
Okay.
We get there's a lot of people up here right now from Copenhagen because it started raining, and we come into these beautiful winters here. So yeah, there's quite a lot of cross pollination of people between Pi and Copenhagen.
I bet it's Copenhagen so beautiful where you are.
It is really beautiful. Yeah, it is very fortunate to be here. Love it. It's a really beautiful part of the world. I will send you some photos afterwards or whatever. So I was gonna, you're gonna remix any of the tunes, or are you just gonna go out there with what was there?
I was gonna say, there were remixes already done that never saw the light of day. But more than that, that was one of the things this is doing. Things like this could be very useful for me because we want remixes done. So if you're a remixer and you wanted to work on a remix of One Giant Leap, any of the tracks, find me. I'm not difficult to find. And I'll send you the stems. And we're really up for having new blood and new concepts.
You know what? I'm not. But instantly when you say that, I can think of two people in this town. Both have studios, both live pretty humble existences doing stuff here and have talent. So that's a really interesting idea to float past them, which I will do.
Great, thank you.
Make the connections because something may come out of that. So
yeah, because I'm also I've had an interesting experience like doing this album with Antama. He's really into the grime thing. I mean, he, as well as being into the chanting Hindu thing, he's also into the Stormzy thing. So I've been working with beats that I've never worked with before, and my nephew has been helping me with them. But yeah, no, I'm really interested in the revolution that has happened because there is us oldies. It's difficult since dubstep. It all got a bit tricky for us.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a drum and bass fan. Dubstep is the dubstep stuff for me. I'm intrigued by it, but it does make me feel old when I listen to it. I mean, it's
exactly, and that's important.
It's another level, the dubstep.
Yeah,
drum and bass I still love, and Goldie lives out here actually. He's just relaunched. Of course, he's from Bristol, isn't he? But he's just relaunched some remixes or an album, and there's a pretty big drum and bass scene here. We had a party here this time last year on the pond here, and we had a DJ come up, a drum and bass DJ from Bangkok. So it's a pretty big scene. But for me, dubstep is out there on its own. It's definitely the next level. I don't really resonate with it. I'm fascinated by it, but it's but for me, it fits in movies actually. So
yeah, no, it does. It really does. It really does. But dubstep is finished now. I mean, my nephew was mad into dubstep. He was a DJ in dubstep, but even he says, well, no, it's moved forward now. But it was part of it was like the punk rock thing back in our time that it just threw everything up. Like, we're not meant to, it's good. Suddenly I'm an old person. I'm not meant to like what the kids like. And now we've gone through that. And as we were discussing a minute ago, the kids are now listening to stuff that I was listening to when I was 14, Led Zeppelin and appreciating the older music. So there's a really interesting mix going on that is nothing like what we were brought up with. There's a new thing happening that we can't understand because we were born through a different time. I mean, there's all kinds of theories about that, about zinc and all kinds of things that have changed. The actual makeup and the programming of kids now is not the same programming that we were receiving. It's different.
Mate, when you're growing up with one of these, I mean, the generation now is, we've come in the middle of it. But yeah, I mean, the generation being born up now are plugged directly into technology from the word go, so you can't, I don't think you can, it's very hard to empathize with what that effect is like, even simple things like the history. I mean, my history is not out there. Yours isn't out there, beyond, thankfully, my history of, clubbing in the 90s. Luckily, there's not this big raft of terrible photos, but yeah, everything, there's a digital footprint now for everyone. They're plugged into technology from the word go. It's going to be an interesting world we're looking at over the next 30 years.
So I'll just put my naive outlook on that as well. I think it's it's so good. The whole, I mean, it's not at the moment because it's plugged us into our addictive behavior. So we've all become addicted to it rather than using it as just a tool. It's not a tool, it's an addiction. But we will move through that. How quickly, we will see, whether it's 50 years or 200 years. I don't know how long it might take for us to move through it. But it is connecting us in a new way, not in a physical, huggy, shaking hands, dancing in front of a DJ way, but in an esoteric way. And I think that the repercussions of that could be the gift that gets us out of the consumerist, addictive, because addiction is the fundamental problem, from the way I see it, from the planet today, me included. I mean, whether it's, I've just bought one of these things. Oh dear, you seen one of these?
Oh, you know what? I know
It's an
two people now.
Oculus.
Yeah, two people I know in the last couple of weeks who bought these. So
Honestly,
I've not looked in one yet. I must stick one on at some point. But I hear they are absolutely phenomenal. So yeah.
Well, it's just whether it does. I mean, obviously there's limitations to it and whatever and everything. But it's just like I'm saying, the gateway that you're going to kind of go, okay, the Ready Player One Spielberg movie, although it's absurd and ridiculous, the fact that I'm at home playing table tennis with my friend in Wales is like, and the table tennis, I mean, it's not real table tennis. It's weird though, how entertaining it is. It's not quite like the real thing, but once you adapt your game, you can have a made. So anyways, that's, I think the exciting thing about the Oculus is it just like this whole expansion that we're going into and beyond the old school festivals, DJs. I mean, I'm sure that's coming back, but right now we're all just getting a window into a different world that maybe we need to get used to more because it's really coming.
It is, yeah. And I think there's room for both. I mean, I don't think you can ever get away from human connection. You're always going to want that. Yeah. But yeah, also
God,
I think
really miss it.
I think
really
that Oculus is just scratching the surface. I mean,
Yeah.
suits and sensors and full immersive experiences are, I think, what it's going to be. So
no, it's coming. It's coming. And it's, but also you could go walk out your village for 20 minutes and go and live there and just ignore the whole fucking thing.
There's a guy by Pathway who's I'd tell my girlfriend he's got to be the happiest bloke I've ever seen. He's got this beaming smile, but yeah, he's a farmer in the fields here. So I think there's always a lesson in that as well. I mean, he's planting rice, lives in the village, knows nothing about an Oculus and looks happy as Larry.
Yeah.
Who knows?
And I'm not sure I should, but there you go. It came into my life. I could afford it. It wasn't any problem, and I've got my studio in there, which, I mean, music tech, you say you're not into that, but even, what we're doing here, just to appreciate the fact that we're talking, is obviously, as my mum would say, quite amazing.
Yeah, I can remember. I remember, people joking about having video phone call. We were like, "Oh, that's the future," and now it's just, it is everything now. So this year I wouldn't give it up. The ability to connect with family, friends, these types of conversations, massively useful in a time where you're restricted travel-wise and lockdown-wise. So yeah, you can't knock it for sure from that point.
Do you know Charles Eisenstein? You come across him?
No.
Okay, he's a kind of thinker, but he's very good. I highly recommend him. He's got concepts about all kinds of things. But one of the concepts that you just said about the future, back in my day and your day as well, we were promised that the future was going to come and there was going to be no disease and everything. We're going to have flying cars and everything will be sorted, and it's inevitable that that's coming. And now we're beginning to realize that the future, when it's arriving, is coming with more disease and more mental anguish and less freedom. And it's quite a shock to us because we were promised, utopia. And we've ended up with a kind of Brave New World utopia where we're all, self-medicating and watching telly,
Indeed. Well, hopefully there's a tipping point. We'll see what happens. But
and also, I'm quite enjoying the self-medicating and watching TV as well. So there we go.
Balancing that out with the Zen temple sounds like the ideal remedy. So,
yeah, in the Zen temple, it's weird. they have a stick that
that they
hit
hit you
Zen
with
temple, and they
on
hit
the
you
head.
with the stick. I
Yeah,
mean,
I've heard
where
this
I
story.
was, it was more softcore than that. You actually volunteer for the stick. But I love that idea that, you know, bringing you back, stop wherever you are, come back here now. This is all we have to deal with. And I think that that's a lesson for me and maybe for everybody right now, that just focus on what's right in front of you and not worry, or, you know, because we're all blessed. Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
Sorry,
Look,
I'm ranting again.
No, you're not. And I'm pretty much, pretty much the end. I just wanted to, the only other thing I wanted you to share, you know, what is the stuff you're working on now that's important? You mentioned Mexico, it'd be good to just share some of that with the audience.
Well, after the second One Giant Leap, What About Me? I was invited to go to Mexico, and I spent 2 years there running around making One Giant Leap Mexico. So it was the same idea, music as the catalyst for wisdom and humor and a window into Mexican life. And then I went to Gabon, and I made a film about the Bwiti religion there and the Iboga medicine that is being abused by smuggling and because it's about, without going down that rabbit hole, again, the homogenization of everything through globalness is a problem that we all have to deal with. So anyways, there. And then now I'm just making records. I'm not so worried about these big ideas, because I think the big ideas they're very 80s in a way. And I'm much more interested in little ideas. Like at the moment, I'm working with a thing I'm doing in Bristol. Just what's going on here in Bristol? And I think that the age of jet setting around the world and it's not cool anymore to jet set around the world. Maybe it wasn't cool then, but we thought it was because we were so blessed, and I was going here and there, and I've been everywhere. Right now, I'm happy here in Bristol with me and my troubles and my depression and my overexcitement and all the things that I have as Duncan. And I'm just kind of go, okay, with everything else, like I said at the beginning of the interview, with everything else gone, there's just a hole that I can expand into. So I'm looking into the space between my thoughts, the space between my breath, the space between my phone calls, which is my life now, you know.
Well, look, awesome. I'm looking forward to, let's see what happens with the re-release of One Giant Leap. Love the album, love the project. Really looking forward to seeing, what re-emerges from it. And I will definitely take you up on that offer, because and if there's someone relevant, I'll make a connection and something cool, creative may come out of that, which will be great. And when traveling does get back, and if you do get to Thailand, you're always obviously welcome up here. We've got a little outhouse, so yeah, please feel free to drop me a line.
Thank you.
If you're ever in the north.
Who knows?
You never know. Who knows? If not, I'll get an Oculus and we can meet in the virtual plane.
All right, nice. Mate. Thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, good. It was really good to meet, and the connection obviously came through my sister. So that was also nice that happened. So I'm speaking to her.
It was a great moment. She stood there in the corner and she just said, "I know you. Why do I know you?" And then, I mean, I don't want to be big-headed, but I think you might know me because you see me on the telly. And she said, One Giant Leap. And it was a really, really lovely moment. So I'm really grateful for that. And thank you.
Awesome. Well, great story and great to meet. And we shall no doubt speak again. So yeah, enjoy the rest of the day. And yeah, speak again sometime.
Okay. Thank you.
Cheers.
All right then. Bye.
Bye.
When I look back over the years at the things that brought tears to my eyes, Papa said we have to be wise to live long lives. Now I recognize what my father said before he dies. Vocalize things I've left unsaid, left my spirit unfed for too long. I'm coming home to my family where I can be strong, be who I plan to be. Within me, my ancestry, giving me continuity. This is what my daddy told me. I wished he would hold me a little more than he did, but he taught me my culture and how to live positive. I never wanna shame the blood in my veins and bring pain to my sweet grandfather's face. In his resting place, I make haste to learn and not waste everything my forefathers earned in tears for my culture. Fall back again. Crawl from the wall. For my culture. I'll never be. I'm the boy who you reduced to tears. Dad, I've been lonely for 27 years. Yeah, that's right. My name's Bob. I'm the one who landed the pop star's job. I'm the one who you told Luke don't touch. I'm the kid who wouldn't amount to much. I believe in the Simpsons side of sound. I have always been too loud. Won't you help me drown it out? What I feel and what I'm feeling is surreal. I'm a massive spinning wheels, always digging in my heels. Now I got the faith to fall back again, crawl from the water to air. You're on your feet again, your feet again. This is what my daddy told me. I wished he'd hold me a little more than he did, but he taught me my culture and how to live positive. I never wanna shame the blood in my veins and bring pain to my sweet grandfather's face. In his resting place, I made haste to learn and not waste everything my forefathers earned in tears for my culture. Fall back again, crawl from the water to air. You're on your feet again, your feet again for my culture. Fall back again, crawl from the water to air. You're on your feet again, your feet again for my culture.
Two were Muhammad Ali and Sonny Barker, the president of Hell's Angels.
This is 1095.